You can generally tell what's really important in a high-stakes trial by what the two sides are fighting about before the trial. That's usually the giveaway, right? In the case of United States versus Sean Diddy Combs, the defense did everything they could to keep that hotel surveillance video light years away from the jury. And the feds fought just as hard to include it. And we thought we knew all the reasons why. We thought that, Diddy seeing viciously attacking a defenseless Cassie Ventura cowering and trying to stay alive, that would be bad for Diddy, right? No way to deny that. But we now know that despicable display from 2016 and the freak off that came right before it was only the half of it. And maybe not even the most important half when it comes to the charges he's facing, racketeering. Today, the jurors in his trial heard from a former security supervisor at that hotel. His name is Eddie Garcia, and he testified that not long after the attack happened, Diddy's chief of staff, Christina Coram, called him to ask for the footage. He said that he told her no on the phone, and again when she showed up in the lobby, said he told her no again. But that night, Garcia testified, Christina Coram called him again, and this time she handed the phone to Diddy. Garcia told the jury in Combs' federal trial that Puff said if that video ever got out, it would ruin his career. He testified that Diddy promised to, quote, take care of him if he could only find a way to get that video. And so Eddie Garcia, who was promised immunity to tell the truth in court, reached out to his boss, who agreed to sell the video for $50,000. And the following day, Garcia brought a USB drive with that video to a meeting, he said included Diddy, that chief of staff, Christina Coram, and one of Diddy's bodyguards. But before handing over that little USB stick, Garcia said he told Diddy he was worried. He was concerned he might be implicated in a crime if Cassie Ventura ever called the police and complained. At which point, according to Garcia, Diddy had a plan. FaceTimed Cassie and ordered her to, quote, tell him you wanted this too, Cassie. A freshly beaten up Cassie was there on the FaceTime wearing a hoodie and complied with Diddy's demand, Eddie testified. He then said he signed a contract swearing that no other copy of the video existed and swearing him to silence with $1 million penalty if he ever spoke of what he saw or of what he did, i.e. the payoff. In return, Garcia says he was handed a bag containing $100,000, double the amount that Garcia's boss had asked for. So he got a bit of it, another guard got a bit of it, and the boss got 50. And allegedly that wasn't the last time that Garcia heard from Sean Combs. Garcia says that Diddy called him on Easter, telling him, quote, you're my angel, God is good, God put you in my life for a reason, end quote. And then Diddy asked whether anybody had asked about the video. And Garcia said he told Diddy no, and that Diddy said, great. Garcia told the jury that Diddy told him if he ever needed anything to reach out, which Garcia did, said he needed a job. But Garcia said he never heard back from Diddy about that. Now, 9 years later, that video has turned up as evidence, not just of craven brutality, but of potential bribery and obstruction of justice, which are two predicate offenses that are required to prove, what do you know, racketeering. Something else that could prove racketeering and the sex trafficking charges? If Cassie Ventura, his girlfriend, was coerced through fear and beatings to take part in those kinky freak-offs with male escorts who were flown in from, other states, that is what you call sex trafficking. It's what you call coercion, forced labor, other predicate acts of RICO. I'm joined now by Sean Deering, a former escort who worked under the name Skylar. He says he participated in more than a dozen sex acts with Diddy and Cassie. Sean, it's really good of you to be here. I appreciate this more than you know, because this is a very sensitive topic. A lot of people are very nervous and concerned, and I can understand if you are as well. Let me start by asking you, when you were with Cassie and Diddy, did you ever get the sense that Cassie wasn't fully into this sex act that you were performing with her while Diddy was watching? Did you ever get the sense that she was doing this because she was being told to do it?
You know, I don't like to assume, and in those situations, I entered in full respect, and I went to everything I say. I don't want to overstep my boundaries and such, and I want to say in all due respect to Cassie throughout the situation, as she treated me with the utmost respect, dignity, even through these crazy acts. You know, initially when I had, in the early days of seeing them, it seemed it was very jovial, like, you know, to adults who wanted to explore further. But as the encounters grew, there was an energy about these situations and such that I guess you could say devolved. So for me to say, from my perspective, that I know for sure by force, it's a little presumptuous, but what I noticed on a physical, from just a physical person-to-person perspective, I'm also a bartender, was a bartender, and I did private parties and such. So I observe people a lot, and I'm that guy. I do appreciate, I love to serve, so I'll listen and such. I mainly was there to ensure I accomplished my goal for that evening. To provide the entertainment that the two people who hired me desired. And, you know, for me to say I can definitely confirm this or that, it would be a little sumptuous, but I can definitely say, you know, there's a spirit that had changed through time. And with that, I don't know what happened behind further closed doors with them, but there were signs, some would say.
Can you qualify that a little more? You said the spirit changed. How did things change? And as these progressed into the latter part of the sex acts that you performed with this trio, did it seem that Cassie was as willing?
That's kind of the how it devolved. It seemed, you know, I don't mean to speak in such broad terms as this, but I perceived, you know, what we did. We were adults on a adult playground through that time and such. And so that kind of was the spirit initially, where she was very just easygoing and warm. And there were times where in the later days, yes, it did seem very performative in a sense, and that's part of the kind spirit that Cassie has, that even, and people, you know, many people will ask, well, why do you go back? What if you're so brave, why'd you keep going? Many won't understand the deep seed of arms that someone with power or fame may have. And I'm just a nobody. I'm just a small dude from a town in Parole, Hawaii. But I was involved in these situations, and you know, Cassie just, I guess all I can say is I have the utmost respect for her, and she shocked me throughout the whole experience. I'm sorry, my train of thought gets a little lost at times, but
it's okay. I do want to be more pointed in my questions, only because it's so critical, because they're debating her reaction in, you know, these sex acts. Her lawyers will say she was fully into it. This was sex between consenting adults. She loved it. She texted him. She loved it. She wanted to do these things. But the prosecutors are saying, and she herself said on the stand, no, I didn't. You know, at first, maybe, sure, but this became my job, and this became something I had to do, because if I didn't please him, I could get beaten up by it. And I just wondered if you ever got the vibe, or if you get a sense that that seemed to check boxes with you as well. That's kind of how you felt about how things digressed.
With that kind of framing, yes. Like I said, I don't want to come out and say that because I don't know what went on further. But the spirit that was there, it definitely devolved from, you know, cordial two couples having fun into, you know, her even going beyond the moment and being kind enough, like, you know, she would put on the smile and then continue in her role. You know, put on the smile, put the head down, and then just continue in the role rather than in the early days of, you know, it's seeing a joyful time. And I also don't want to speak too much beyond, I don't want to say too much for certain reasons. Out of respect for Cassie, for other reasons.
Can you tell me this? Did you ever sense any fear? Did you ever sense that Cassie had any fear of the way you and she behaved if Diddy were in the room or if he weren't in the room?
That's one thing, you know, I used the term, she's a badass lady in the People article recently. And I mean that in the sense that she could step back and understand. I wouldn't use the word fear. I would use the word respect. She respected what her role was, what she was there for. And I ultimately believe that's the only reason I was seen more than once, is that there's somewhat of a kindred spirit between her and I, where I love to serve and I do truly do appreciate others. And I do believe that she has that as well deeply. And, you know, she wanted to make the most of this situation. She wanted to satisfy this.
Let me ask you this, Sean. Sorry to interrupt, but let me ask you this. There was some episode you described where Sean Combs walked out of the room and you asked her a question and she shushed you and said, no, 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 we can't talk until he comes back in the room. Is that true? Is that what happened? Is that the correct description?
Yes, that did happen, and I realize I would like to keep I'm going to try to keep our private moments a little more between us moving forward. But there was a moment, you know, where the acts were happening and Diddy left the room, and I forget what I had said, but I kind of just like, hey, you know, what about this or that? I forget what the topic was. But it was a moment where I kind of had a realization of the depths of the situation where it is, because she was, you know, we were passionate seconds before, and then the next moment you could tell there was something that had come over her in a sense that she knew it may cause jealousy. I don't know, jealousy or something of the nature if her and I interacted in some way with him not there. So
you sensed a fear. You sensed a fear that came over her very quickly once he left the room, that there should be no conversation between you. Did it sound as though it seemed to you she was frightened?
That's why I use the term she's a badass lady. I wouldn't say frightened. I say she just understood the situation to the extent that she needed to. And that's why I'm sorry, like with her, I wouldn't say fear, you know, like it was mostly just she understood the situation and she and yes, you know, I know that through those times, like that demon in his eye, yes, but I personally, I just see her as such a strong individual that I didn't necessarily see fear in her, just she knew her role at that time. Or
Sean Deering, I'm very appreciative of you speaking. That you have spoken with the prosecutors, correct? They know your contributions to the knowledge base of your involvement, right?
I'll just I've received guidance from individuals on. I'm just going to try to leave it at that. I'm here speaking with you, attempting to just have my side heard, and ultimately, I just want Cassie respected out of all this. You know, my face was out there, okay, and I just want to let my side be heard. But I don't want to overspeak, okay, and
you may have to. If they call you onto the stand, I'm nice. They're not sometimes. So I will watch for it. And Sean, if you do testify, I would love to talk to you again. I appreciate you speaking with me tonight.
Nice chatting with you. Have a good night.
You too. Folks, the Diddy case has taught a lot of us more than we ever wanted to know about racketeering laws. But Diddy's hardly the first celebrity to face RICO. The rapper Young Thug was also charged with racketeering and stood trial for almost 2 years before agreeing to a plea deal last October. In exchange for pleading guilty to drugs and firearms charges and no contest to racketeering, he was sentenced to 15 years of probation, but no prison time. The foreman on Young Thug's jury was a man named Jason Collins, who's just launched a YouTube series about his experience. And Jason is kind enough to join me now. Man, oh man, good to talk to you as well, Jason. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me.
How much of a learning curve? I just can't imagine. You go from this normal life and you're thrown into a courtroom and suddenly you got to learn everything there is to know about RICO. Do you feel as a juror you have a very different perspective of what it is to be found guilty of RICO than, say, all the people reading the headlines about Diddy?
Correct. I mean, it's so much that's involved, and it's so big. And going into it, I wasn't knowledgeable about it, but after sitting in that courtroom for that amount of time, you get to start to learn, or start to learn about racketeering and RICO and the web that the prosecutors are trying to formulate and give us as jurors to understand what's happening. I will say that I'm a huge opponent of RICO, especially in that case right there, because I think that the court case was not set up in a manner to charge most of the defendants inside who were being charged in that courtroom. However, I will say that it's good to know what someone, I mean, the amount of evidence that someone should bring to the courtroom in order to be able to charge someone properly. But RICO, I was not a huge fan of it. I thought that the court case itself was done poorly. I've expressed that, and I believe the state was unorganized, and that's what led to either the plea deals as well as the verdict that the other jurors and I came up with towards the very end.
And what was that verdict?
The verdict is not guilty, except for it was one charge, if I'm mistaken, that was given to one of the defendants, and everyone else took a plea deal, including Jeffrey Williams. So, yeah, it was a long process.
Let me ask you this. Now that you've been through it, are you way more mindful? You see a case like Diddy's and you're watching every single moment of it because you want it, because you know what it takes now. Are you seeing in Diddy's case that the threshold is being met for RICO?
Threshold is there, and I thought about that. There's what do you want to, as a juror, you want to be able to show a web and how things are connected, and it's up to the juror to follow the story. And for me in particular, I followed the facts. I was not going by the emotions. I was going strictly by the facts. So you have the defense team who provided their evidence and providing what they want us to know, and you have the prosecution team who did the same exact thing. However, if things are not matching up, then you start to wonder, okay, then now you have to differentiate who's telling the truth and who is stretching the truth. And so in this PDD case that's going on, which is worldwide, if I was a juror on that court case, I'm going to see any consistencies. I'm going to take out the emotions, and I'm going to go by the facts. It is up to the defense team to provide me the facts that took place. Of course, the prosecution team is going to share what they have to share what they have to share. However, it's a web, and this court case right here does give a threshold, I believe, of a RICO case. This is a prime example of a RICO case. What Young Thugs was going through, there was a lot of made up things that the jurors and I started to question. But this particular trial right now, there's a lot of evidence that's there, but it's up to the jurors to connect those dots and then formulate their own opinion once it's time for them to reach a verdict.
I can't wait to have you back, and I'm going to invite you early and often, Jason Collins. You really have your head around this like not many people do, so I really appreciate your knowledge. Will you come back?
Yes, thank you. I mean, I definitely wouldn't want to come back, though. This is a major trial, and it's so great to speak with you. But this trial is going to shake the world in so many ways, especially the industry as well.
And it will teach a lot of people about this particular set of laws and what it takes to get a conviction. Thank you so much, Jason Collins. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
What started as a search for 3 little girls in Washington state, 3 little girls that the police labeled as endangered missing persons, is now a full-on manhunt for just one man, their father, and presumably their killer. We told you last night about 9-year-old Peyton Decker and her 2 little sisters, Evelyn, age 8, and Olivia, age 5. They were picked up last Friday by their dad, Travis Decker, who somehow had a custody arrangement with their mom, even though he was homeless and mentally unstable. He spent his nights in motels and campgrounds and sometimes his truck, police said. Nevertheless, court documents say he was permitted to see his girls every other weekend, but not overnight. And so, on Friday evening, when Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia weren't back in their own beds, their mother feared the worst. And today, those fears came true when a forest deputy found Travis Decker's truck near a campground. Decker himself nowhere to be seen, but the officers soon found the bodies of his 3 little girls. So when he too is found, he will face 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of first-degree kidnapping. Until then, police say he is highly dangerous, a military veteran with wilderness training and borderline personality disorder. Which brings me back to the gut-wrenching question of how he had unsupervised visitation privileges in the first place. Joining me now is former judge and prosecutor Tarlika Nunes-Navarro. She is now the dean of the St. Thomas University College of Law. Judge, that's the question. How on earth could a man like that, who is homeless and who has borderline personality disorder, be given unsupervised custody of 3 little girls?
Well, hi, Ashley. Thank you for having me on. I wish it was under different circumstances. This one is a tearjerker, and my heart goes out to all of the parties involved. As a former judge, I can tell you, every night we go home making sure that, doubting and thinking, what could we do differently, hoping that something like this doesn't happen. Many cases look like this on the front end, and they don't end up like this. And many cases don't look so bad and they end up like this. And so it really is shameful knowing that this could have been prevented. So, when we look at visitation rights and creating parenting plans, always have to think about the best interest of the children, which also means weighing the consideration of that child's right to have the father and the mother both in the lives of these small children. And so we look at many factors, and of course, there were a lot of red flags in this case, and that is the sad part that we're dealing with here.
I mean, the best interests of the child, I keep coming back to that, and sending them off unsupervised with a homeless father for whom it's a little hard to knock on a door to say you're late with the kids. I do not get it. Which brings me to my next question. Not that a wrongful death lawsuit and massive settlement would ever make that mother whole again, but is that a possibility here?
Of course, it's always a possibility. An Amber Alert should have been issued, and it wasn't. It was declined by the state, and we don't know why yet. They're saying criteria was simply just not met, that an abduction or imminent harm was not present. I respectfully disagree at this point. I think an Amber Alert should have probably been issued, and it would have saved these little girls' lives.
They say no imminent threat. Rarely does someone grab the children, make the threat, and then run. But maybe the grabbing didn't happen. But when somebody doesn't have a home and has this borderline personality disorder and is 2 to 3 days overdue, why is that not considered an imminent threat? How was it not considered an imminent threat?
Exactly. We have a homeless vet who is clearly on the decline. He had lost his housing. We know that he had been diagnosed previously with the borderline personality disorder. He had been ordered anger management and failed to do so, according to the court filings, and also failed to conduct a mental health evaluation as well. So we have all of these red flags. I would think that the law enforcement officers would take this into consideration. And I can tell you what, if I'm the attorney for that mother, I'm going to make sure I want to know that every single protocol is followed here.
And if I'm the attorney for this guy, if he's ever found alive, good luck with an insanity defense, because he ran and he hid, which usually means insanity is the farthest rung you can reach for. Judge Navarro, great to have you. I so appreciate it. I wish it were under better circumstances, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. Have a good night.
The man known as the Devil of the Ozarks strolled out of a prison in Arkansas 9 days ago, wearing a lawman's uniform, and Grant Hardin has not been seen since. It's particularly disturbing because he's a former police chief turned rapist and murderer. But tonight we have a better idea of what he might look like now. No idea why the authorities waited 9 days to give us a more recent picture of him. Maybe that's why it was so easy for him to escape. Folks in charge seem to be a little bit asleep at the switch, at this anyway. The bounty on his head now stands at $25,000. But that is half as much as what they're offering for the 2 remaining escapees who jumped off the loading docks at the New Orleans City Jail. And speaking of those fugitives, we have showed you the social media post that one of them decided was a good idea, where he swears that he was wrongly locked up and asks everybody under the sun to save him. Here again is what appears to be Antoine Massey on Sunday.
I'm one of the ones that was let out on News Parish jail where they said I escaped, right? I'm asking for help, please, before they throw me away for something that I did not do.
Let out? They say you escaped? My darling, you definitely escaped. We originally reported that he was being held on murder charges, but that has been updated to auto theft and domestic abuse involving strangulation. The other New Orleans escapee who hasn't been caught either is Derek Groves, and he's the one awaiting trial on 2 counts of second-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted second-degree murder. And as for the video that was posted, police aren't confirming yet, that it's legit on the record, but the Associated Press is reporting that police raided a home just a few miles from the jail after receiving a tip from relatives who recognized the room behind him in the post. The AP says Massey wasn't there, but guess what was? This distinctive clothing and the shoes, apparently, things he was wearing in the video and left behind at that location. My next guest knows more about tracking Antoine Massey than most, because Matthew Dennis caught Antoine Massey once before after a previous prison escape in 2023. Matthew's a bail bondsman and electronic monitoring specialist, and he's live with me now. Matthew, I was shocked when I heard that Antoine Massey had escaped before, and then you come along to tell us, oh no, he's escaped 4 times before. Why is this guy so good at it?
I think he's just had a lot of opportunities. I mean, it's spread out. It's through different agencies. I mean, he's had a lot of opportunities, and he clearly takes advantage of them.
So when you caught him, give me the specs on what the circumstances were, where you caught him, and what he was like.
Well, I mean, with Antoine, we caught him. It's hard to answer that question. I mean, we caught him in a way that I don't want him to know how we caught him. We caught him quickly. He cut his ankle monitor off, and within 4 hours, we had him back in jail. It's hard to answer that question. I'm sorry, because if I answer that question, he'll know how I caught him, and I don't need him to know that because, I mean, there could be other people involved.
Sure, and there's $50,000 on the line for whoever can bring this guy in or lead, get information that leads to his capture. So maybe just tell me what he's like. When you did finally get him in your grasp, what is he like?
Listen, Antoine came into our program on a court order. He was ordered into our program as a condition of his release. He was charged with strangulation, like you said, and the theft of the car, and it was a domestic case. He had previously cut an ankle monitor off, so they ordered him into our program because we have full arrest powers. We work directly with the bail agents. When Antoine came into our program, we knew he had cut a monitor off, so we were paying attention. He left our office and went straight to the Walmart on Bullard here out in New Orleans East, and he cut it off, and he fled. And at that point, it's not just me, it's a team. It's a very professional bail agency called Blair's Bail Bonds. They're the agency that did the bond. They're very fast, they're very quick, they're very efficient, they're very professional. We can call them. They show up, they come with us. And their team is with us when we arrest Antoine. They know Antoine. They're the ones that get him out of jail. They're the ones that talk to his family. They're the ones that have all the information. We have the digital tracking data from the monitor. So catching Antoine was based on a cooperation between the bail agent and our agency and the court who ordered him onto the monitor, because it goes deeper than just the bondsman. We work directly with NOPD and with the U.S. Marshals Gulf Coast Task Force and other agencies to catch people like this. Antoine he's like any other person. The truth is, you made a mistake with Groves. Groves is not facing trial. He's convicted. He was facing sentencing and sent off to DOC for the rest of his life. With Massey, he wasn't facing a lot. He has an open case in St. Tammany for a rape charge, which is a domestic case connected to the same victim as the Orleans case. Antoine's claim that he's innocent and all of that. Antoine was convicted of domestic violence by strangulation, the auto theft. He was convicted of tampering with an ankle monitor, and he was put on probation. And he very quickly violated the probation, and he was rearrested and put in jail for violation of probation. While there, he caught a new charge out of St. Tammany. So Antoine's not innocent.
He's going to catch a new charge. Matthew, he's going to catch a new charge when they catch him, if they catch him this time for escape. I got to wrap it there, but I want to have you back. Matthew Dennis, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
If the name Patricia Krenwinkel makes your eyes go wide, congrats. You're of a certain age, the age of Charles Manson. There was a time when Krenwinkel was front page news right across the country for months. She and a group of 20-somethings were devoted followers of Manson and even agreed to kill for him. Patricia was 21 years old back in 1969 when she and 3 other Manson family cult members murdered 5 innocent people attending a get-together in the Hollywood Hills. The killers emerged out of the bushes and besieged the upscale home, beating and stabbing and shooting to death all 5 victims. One of them was actress Sharon Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant at the time, and the wife of famed movie director Roman Polanski. Another victim was Abigail Folger of the famous Coffee dynasty. The next night, Patricia Krenwinkel and her crew attacked another home in the hills, the home of a grocer named Lino LaBianca. He and his wife Rosemary were killed in the same gruesome way that the Tate group was killed. They were stabbed dozens of times with the words "helter skelter" and "death to pigs" written in their blood on the walls. Krenwinkel admitted that she did the stabbings, and she wrote the bloody messages, all to appease Manson, who was trying to start a race war. She was convicted and sentenced to death in 1971, as were the others. But their sentences were commuted to life, with the possibility of parole. That happened back in 1977. Krenwinkel has been denied that parole 16 times, but it looks like she just might make it this time. A few days ago, the panel within the California Parole Board decided that Krenwinkel's risk of reoffending is, quote, low, and they recommended her for parole. It's not a done deal yet by any stretch. The Parole Board's legal division has to sign off before the case then heads to the governor's office for his stamp. But 3 years ago, Governor Newsom had the same file on his desk and opted not to grant her parole. Patricia Krenwinkel is now 77 years old and is just one of 3 of the Manson family members either alive or in prison. The other is Charles Tex Watson. 2 years ago, Leslie Van Houten was granted parole after being denied 20 times. She spent 53 years in prison. The sister of victim Sharon Tate runs an online petition aimed at keeping Krenwinkel locked up. Deborah Tate says, quote, society cannot allow this serial killer back out. But if things line up for Patricia Krenwinkel, she could be free within a few months. There is a reason that you don't see zebras at Churchill Downs. They're not that fast. Apparently, though, they can outrun the police when they want to. And the one who got away from his new home in Tennessee the other day must really, really want to. There you go. How a zebra ended up in private hands in Tennessee is a whole other story. But his owners took possession just last Friday, and before they could even give this little guy a name, he was gonzo, bolting out onto the street. That was Saturday. And he didn't just run off into the woods either. Check this out. He was like weaving in and out of traffic on Interstate 24 just outside of Nashville. Look at that little guy. Hi. He forced the police to actually shut the interstate down in both directions. At last check, he was still on the loose. Multiple agencies were trying to track him down. That is when they weren't posting memes about him. Police in Murfreesboro reminded residents to lock their cars, with a fugitive in their midst. And a neighboring police department adopted the little runaway, claiming that he's their newest recruit and working undercover. I might add, he's already earned his stripes. Okay, look, they're trying their best. Seriously, if you're in Middle Tennessee and you find this guy in your driveway, the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office would appreciate a phone call. Don't try to approach him, though. He's a bit skittish, and you never know. They might actually be able to catch him if they can get close.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.